All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining. I'm really glad that you're here. Hopefully we provide some really great value. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. Let some folks come in, settle down, get ready, and we'll go ahead and start in about 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. All right, welcome. We're really glad that you're here. Hopefully, we have some really great value for you today. Lisa and I are going to be presenting on is your team really agile? How do you know if your team is agile? What steps can you take? How do you assess your teams to see where you need to go next, possibly? I'd like to introduce my colleague, Lisa Bender. Lisa, take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Rachel. Yes. To everyone on the webinar, hi, my name is Lisa Bender. Really glad you guys hopped on for this session with us today. My background is primarily in IT. I actually started as a developer, had the chance probably a year and a half into my professional career to get certified as a Scrum Master, and I never looked back. I love working with people. I love working with organizations, going in, seeing where they're at, observing areas that they can improve on, and then helping guide them along their journey. As you can see below, I have some certifications predominantly through the Scrum Alliance, and I also have some scaling certifications through SAFe. I'm going to toss it back to my colleague, Rachel, and let her introduce herself.
Oh, that's awesome, Lisa. Thanks. So my name is Rachel Schumacher, and I have a very different story. I actually came from the project management space in the project management world, and I own project management. I was working with people and groups and contractors who were always struggling to get things on time, on budget. I was getting midnight calls or 11 o'clock in the evening calls because there was a fire and we're gonna go off of track of our plan. And I started looking around for a better way. Like, what can we do to solve some of these problems I am always facing? It's a very stressful role trying to keep everything together. I sort of stumbled into the agile space, and it took me a long minute to really understand how to manage risks, how to manage scope, how to manage the schedule when you're not managing anything at all. It was a very, very interesting place to go and to change, and to have that mindset shift is very difficult for me. So I have been shaped my career into working with companies, working with organizations that are going through the same concern of doing an agile transformation that I went through myself. I have empathy for it. I did it myself. It's hard to change that mindset and to really see how, if you're not in control, how are things going to come together? How are you going to make sure that all these metrics and all these numbers and the return on the investment, how are you going to ensure, if you're not in control of anything, how are you going to ensure that it's all done on time? That you're not going to lose, that you're not going to fail, your team isn't going to fail. So I understand it. I've worked with companies now for many years, trying to help them with their agile transformations, help them grow into the agile space. And that's what we're here for today. we have a list of things to talk about. This is essentially kind of the flow of today's conversation. We're going to start with just the basics. What is agility? And why do assessments matter? And who do they matter to? Then what should be measured and what goals, how to align the goals. We're going to move into conducting an assessment and then some success metrics and then some tools themselves that Lisa has picked out some really, really great tools. So going to the core, guys, everything, every problem that you face, every concern that you face with your teams, with your organizations, with your folks and your accountabilities, every single one, if you have an issue or concern or things are not going right, I guarantee you 100% you can map them directly back to the Agile Manifesto, that the principles are not being followed somewhere in the organization or somewhere in the team. I go through these on a regular basis. And when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with customers, I go through and just do a mapping. Well, I don't see that we are delivering product frequently. We're holding our releases for big bang releases. Or we're not working together daily. We have business over here and a silo development team over here. Each and every single one of these principles will map directly to an issue that you have. Keep them in mind as you're looking through and as you are trying to see how agile your team really is. Go to the basics, go to what matters. Look at the principles, look at the values. Are we bringing these into the fabric of our day-to-day work life? Are we actually living and implementing these into what we believe, breathe, what we do, what we think? It's innate. It's our natural instinct is that team wants to reflect on how to be more effective, not just in the retrospective, but on a daily basis. How can we be better at bringing the principles into our own space? And assessments. I had a friend, my mentor and colleague, as I was coming into the Agile space, he's one of the people who actually helped convince me to convert and transfer over my mindset. This mentor, I reached out to when I had a new team. I was a brand new Scrum Master. I was trying to figure out how to do Scrum. And I'm like, this team doesn't want to do it. Senior leadership wanted to go agile. The team had zero desire to be agile at all. So I had pressure from the leadership group to become, get this team moving forward in the agile space. And I had them putting their heels deep into the mud. We're not doing it. A lot of resistance. Okay, so first team, I'm freaking out. I reach out to my mentor. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. Like, I don't know how to approach this. His first thing he said is give them an assessment, find out where they're at, find out from a thinking standpoint where they're at, from a metric standpoint where they're at, from a, are they doing the events thing? Find an assessment that will allow you to show the team's growth and to celebrate success, that will allow you to do that. If you are able to show successes and you can show that, then you are showing your value, and you're showing your value to the leadership, and you're showing your value to the team. And then make a roadmap for future improvements. It gives you a starting point, baseline to say, okay, this is where we're at. That's okay. We don't expect this to be easy. That's fine. Hey, how do we want to get there? Where do we want to get to the future? There's our guiding light. There's our vision. Let's plan some big major milestones, some big steps that we can take to get there. Make a roadmap for your future improvements based upon the original baseline assessment that you did. Do not allow your assessments to become weapons or weaponize them against the team. That is one thing. If you are going to do an assessment, and if it is any way used as a weapon, you are going to lose psychological safety. you will then not be able to show that those principles and those values are inside the team because you have allowed the team to fail or feel as if they are being compared to another team, perhaps, and they're not as far in the agile space. They're going to start digging their feet back in, and they're going to give you reasons why they failed. Do not allow your assessments to become weapons. Assessments allow you to prove your value. And this one's big. This is personal. We all want our jobs, right? We put a roof over our head. We got a mortgage to pay. We got kids to feed. We need our jobs. So how are we actually proving our value when we're really just, helping the team along? How do we show that we did it as well? Because we don't take credit for what the team's successes are. This is their journey in the agile space. This is their personal journeys. How do we then show our value when we're promoting our teams all the, how do we show? How do we prove that we should get a paycheck? Assessments help with that. Hey, say, this is where we were to your leadership or whomever is signing your paycheck. This is where we were in the beginning. The team, always give credit to the folks doing the work. The team has made major successes here. They have gone from this point to this point in this short of time. It proves your value to the leadership, that you are the one guiding them. They're the ones doing the work. And who do assessments matter to? How do we even align the goals? So inside of every company that is doing an agile transformation, there is at least one person that had a great idea that said, okay, we're going to go agile. I heard this works, or I've seen it work. I love agile. We're going to do it. There's at least one champion in the leadership group that is championing the agile transformation. Find those people. Those people will have an idea or a goal for what they want the agile transformation to look like. Get to know and understand what they want, what their expectations are. Now, it doesn't mean, because we want to be able to align our goals with their goals, but much more importantly, we need to align the initiatives of the team. We bring it down to the team, let the team choose, as self-organizing, self-managing teams that they are. Let them choose, let them own it. They will champion it much more if they own it. So let them choose what the initiatives and the goals are. Work with them to help pinpoint what those goals are. Try to align them with what the leadership's goals are, if it's at all possible. Align the long-term goals. Think long-term with this. Mr. and Mrs. Leadership of the Agile transformation. The team has chosen to take these smaller steps. Here are our big goals. And that allows you to communicate it out and understand what we are trying to assess. Anytime you're doing an assessment, you need to have a vision on what we are actually assessing. Are we assessing productivity increase? Are we assessing morale, motivation, psychologically safety? What do we actually want to assess? And that's very important. So the tools that you pick don't go all over the place. It's not going to help anybody to measure the wrong thing. Being objective and being confidential is critical. If folks are going to feel threatened because their answers to the assessment tests are not confidential, then they are going to fluff the answers. They're gonna make it look good. They might not give their holistic impression that you really need. And if you are not showing the holistic impression, what are you doing? What are you showing? You're showing a absolutely worthless piece of, junk. You're not showing anything that has real value. And you won't be able to if you don't establish a strict confidentiality rule, and that is with everybody. So another one, big one, do not reference individuals or subgroups. We don't want anybody to feel like they are attacked in any way, or even a small group of people. If you're doing an assessment over multiple teams, don't talk about team A versus team B, or team A thinks like this, or, for team A, we are assessing these measures because team B is further ahead. You're back to weaponizing. Keep it confidential. Don't reference individuals. Don't reference individual roles, even as all possible. Try to keep it as objective as possible. Now, one really great tool for many reasons is to collaborate. Get a group consensus, get everybody's buy-in on what the response should be, what the answer is to the question. Hypothetically, if the question is asking, do we conduct proper daily scrums? Or are our daily scrums really focusing on the sprint goal? You're going to have some folks who are going to say, yes, absolutely, we're at a 5. And other folks that are going to say, no, we're really more at a 2. And what we want to do is find that ground where everybody agrees at some level. So use some facilitation techniques, get a good collaboratory session to where everybody now, you've opened a conversation, gives you a good teaching moment, by the way. You've opened a conversation up about the daily scrum, and people can really get together and see where can the room be for improvement. Why are we not actually at a 5? Oh, why are we actually at a 2? And come to that group consensus on the response. Without being objective, we are not able to use the data that we know now, the information that we know now, to have a plan moving forward. If we are not being objective and we have an agenda somewhere, then we are not using real information. We need that real information to be able to make a plan, or else our plans will fail. Now, this is a great coaching opportunity. As you are giving an assessment and as you are talking through what we are measuring, whatever it may be, as you are doing that, you have an opportunity to teach, coach, facilitate. You have an opportunity to explain why. Why does this matter? Any transformation, any team, they have to understand why to be able to get excited about it, to think, oh, that'll actually help me. That will actually make my life better, our teams better. It will actually help us produce more. I won't have 12 o'clock in the night phone calls, whatever it may be. But getting down to where the value is allows you to give that opportunity to have that little teaching moment, that little coaching moment. How will they personally benefit? How will the teams benefit? I love this picture. Encourage by using different lenses. We all have different perspectives. We all have different points of view. We all have different worries. We all have different concerns. We all have different things that keep us up at night. And we want and get that the objectivity from everybody from all around of why we want to try to see it, empathy for other groups, other people who are in the same space or the same sphere. What are they thinking? It's really important to try to communicate the importance of people letting down their own subjective views and allowing them to come and have a greater empathy for the greater all picture, the greater picture. So sometimes you might want to bring in a coach, bring in somebody who has no skin in the game. They are completely objective. They are going to look at it black and white. They are not going to be colored by their own personal preferences as much. Bring in an objective coach to maybe help facilitate a good assessment. Get a group consensus. Guys, it's so important. Get a group consensus, get a collaboratory feel or environment. Communicate loudly and often. each team will adopt at their own pace. Communicate that off the mountains with a huge, and smoke signals. It doesn't matter how you communicate it, as long as everybody really understands it. We cannot have an agile transformation weaponized against teams or individuals or even groups. Yes, they will move at their own pace. We're all different people, where every single team member is a different person, and they all have different views, different worries, and different concerns. Okay, I am going to pass this over to my awesome colleague, Lisa Bender. She has done some really deep research here going into how to actually conduct an assessment and some really cool tools and tricks and tips. Lisa, you take it away.
Yeah, let me take over here. All right, so I'm going to be taking on the second half of this webinar and really focusing more tactically on how can you conduct an Agile assessment. What does that look like? What are the steps that you're going to go through? Potentially some metrics that you want to look at or track. And then I'm going to wrap up with some assessment tools that I have gone through and tested myself. And that'll kind of wrap things up in a bow for us. So when you're conducting an Agile assessment, Rachel did a really good job of stressing the importance of setting the stage for your team, making sure that everyone is starting from the same place, understanding why you're doing this, understanding that this assessment for your team is just a diagnostic tool. It's for them, for their improvement. You're not going to be doing any comparison across teams. You can have the team compare its progress from when they start to down the line, but it's just for their own growth. So not shockingly, the first thing that you're going to need to do when you're conducting an assessment is pick what it is that you want your team to be going through and doing. So you need to select either an existing assessment or you can build your own. In my experience, what I've done with teams is kind of a combination of both of these things, where I've gone and picked an existing assessment and then I've customized it to meet the needs of my team. Making sure that it's meeting them where they are. Another thing that's going to be important in these assessments is whatever questions or statements that you're asking your team, make sure they understand the language and the terminology that's used in them so that they have the best chance at answering honestly. Once you have gone through and picked whatever assessment you want them to take, you can go ahead and conduct it. One of the things that Rachel really drove home, and I'm going to reiterate, is that you need to make sure that these responses are confidential, that people feel safe giving these answers. And when you're doing this assessment, depending upon if you're doing it on your own or if you're doing it with a tool, there are going to be different methods of delivery that you can use. The ones that I've seen, sometimes you can send a survey out to your team and have them complete it that way. If you're going the tool route, some might give you the opportunity to email them a link, give them some instructions on what to do. Whatever is going to work best for your organization, go ahead and do that. Another kind of tip or trick, something that I've learned from my experience as a Scrum Master, when you're doing an assessment with a team, anytime you have changes in the makeup of that team, you have somebody new hop on, you have somebody leave, you're going to have to redo that baseline, right? Because you want this to reflect the growth of that team through time. And that's okay if that happens, but you would reestablish your baseline and then move forward to track that progress. Once you have done the assessment with your team, however you decided to do that, you're going to want to get together in a group setting and review and analyze those results. What does it mean? What is shocking to the team? What is exactly on the money for them? Figure out kind of the overall consensus of that baseline, if this is the first time that you're doing it, or if this is potentially one where you've already done your baseline and you're doing it again, look at what has changed. As Rachel mentioned, let the team pick the improvement area they want to focus on. Give them that autonomy, give them that level of trust that they're going to pick something meaningful to them and be able to have improvements that are meaningful as a whole once they really dive into that particular issue. Something that's going to help them once they've identified that area is to figure out success metrics. And I'll dive into that a little bit more on the next slide, what that means, what that looks like. And once you've established that baseline, in the next 3 to 6 months, you can redo that assessment and compare your results. I say 3 to 6 months, that's just a guide. I typically don't recommend that you try to do these assessments more than every 3 months. Be respectful that your team, in addition to trying to improve in these different areas, still has a product that they're building. They have other things going on. So while they will dedicate focus to this, it's not the only thing they have happening. As I mentioned, success metrics. This is really going to help your team hone in on whether that area of improvement, they're actually making strides one way or the other in that direction. So have a discussion. This might be a really good topic for you to dive into in a retrospective with your team. Put up your results, let them pick an area, and then let them decide what success looks like. If you're having potentially a quality issue, dig into that a little bit deeper with them. Are they having an issue with escaped defects to prod? Is your support person or team, however you're configured, getting inundated with the same kinds of requests? Really peel that back, and that's going to help you create some of these indicators that are going to show positive and or negative growth towards this overarching goal that you've set for yourself. Typically here, I recommend you have a mix of leading and lagging indicators, because that's going to give you the best, most holistic view of your progress in this particular area. A lagging indicator is just a measure of your past performance. It's really easy to measure, but it's not going to give you any insights into the future, what's coming up next. So if you're thinking in terms of finance, right, they always have these quarterly reviews, and they put together their profit sheets and their revenue. Profit and revenue, looking back to the quarter, would be an excellent example of a lagging indicator. Additionally, if you wanted to look at this in terms of the Agile lens, right, you could look at the number of stories delivered over time. Again, that's going to be a lagging indicator. Sorry, let me get some water, 1 second. Moving forward, leading indicators are going to give you a window into the future. They're going to help you figure out where you're headed and ultimately try to drive you closer to that improvement goal. Now, these are a little bit trickier. They're harder to measure, but if you're trying to only focus on lagging indicators, you're potentially going to miss out on pivots that you could make to really adjust or achieve that end goal that you're going towards. So it can be really nice to have leading and lagging indicators that you pair together to help you achieve your desired outcome. The next thing, don't overdo it with these metrics. I personally am a very numbers, data happy spreadsheet person, right? I like putting together budgets. My husband is not a numbers person. I'll spew numbers at him. He's like, whoa, stop, right? Be mindful of the audience of your team. Make sure you understand what makes them tick, what works for them. So if you can achieve what you need with a handful of metrics, 4 to 6, great. You don't need to do 20 metrics. Don't make it something that's going to be a pain for you and your team to stay on top of and track. Do just enough, see if that works, and adjust it, right? If you need more data, figure out additional data points. If you need less, cut back. Don't overthink it. Next up, be transparent. Explain what it is that you're doing, make sure your team understands, and explain it potentially if you're in a scaled environment, what it is you're doing to other teams, right? Additionally, share your successes, share your wins, and share any potential potholes that others could avoid in the future based off of your learnings. Lastly, minor fluctuations are normal. You're going to see things change as you're trying to address this particular improvement area. It could be that your hypothesis for some of your metrics is wrong and you need to tweak that. It could be that the approach that you're taking to try to make strides towards improving this area didn't work, and that's okay. What we're really focused on is trends over time, ideally positive, but negative ones can be indicative of something as well. We're going to move on to 2 potential tools up next that you can use to conduct an Agile assessment. The first one is something that we put together here at Clearly Agile. If you want to be able to follow along, I encourage you to go to the link at the top of this slide, agileasamindset.com. It's a really great basic tool to get you started if you haven't done Agile assessments before, or as Rachel mentioned earlier, if you really want to get back to what is the heart of Agile, what is it that we're trying to do to get better? This tool aligns with the 12 Agile principles. And when you first go into it, it's going to have a principle at the top, and then it's going to have 5 answers that you can give. And you're going to answer whatever makes sense for your team, your context. And based on that answer, it's going to give you a score. So you're going to go through, there are 12 principles. You're going to have 12 statements that you need to answer and align against. It's going to bring you up to a screen where you can either go back and review your answers, or you can move forward and check your results. This is kind of a sample result. I just clicked through this so I could have this for the purposes of this webinar to display. But as you're going to see, it's going to give you an overall score. So based on the answers I provided, it says, I am a maturing Agilist, 72 out of 100. Great. So if I'm a Scrum Master, a coach coming and looking at this, I'm going to say, okay, this team that I'm working with already has a good grasp in some areas, but there are some other aspects that we could dive into to really amp up their overall abilities. If you look a little bit closer, you're going to see that you have C, satisfy the customer, welcome changing requirements, right? A shortened version of that principle, and it gives you a grade in each of these. So you can decide to dive in specifically, or you can review this report holistically and let the team pick what it is they want to improve on. A nice feature of this particular tool is, depending on your answer, it's going to give you some insights potentially into where you're starting, and then some areas or ideas for how you can improve in the future. Typically, you're going to see that over on this nice blue icon, but it'll go through all 12 principles. Lastly, if you scroll to the bottom, you're going to be able to see this nice spiderweb graphic that shows you how you're doing on these principles relative to one another. It's also going to be nice for you to take this, save it as an image, and then a year from now, right, if you're doing these every 3 months, see how much it is expanding out. That can be a really nice, cool visualization for those that want to see things maybe a little bit more graphically. Lastly, you will be able to print out this report and save it and reference it, like I said, when you're getting that holistic view. You can take this assessment an unlimited amount of times. We don't ask you for your email. We don't need your phone number. Completely free to use. We just want you to be able to get started doing an assessment with your team to help you gauge where's your starting line, so you can help guide the team towards positive improvements. Next up is a tool called Comparative Agility. This is actually something that came out of Mike Cohn and Kenny Rubin back in the early 2000s. They put together an assessment called Comparative Agile because they wanted to be able to get a master set of data from teams across industries, across different levels of maturity. So if you wanted to see how you were doing as a team compared to a global index, you would be able to do that. So that's kind of where the Comparative Agility tool started back in the early 2000s. Since then, it has really grown and exploded to be a very data-rich tool that you can leverage. This is also a free tool. I first learned about this tool actually through my certifications with the Scrum Alliance. You're kind of able to create an account that way. If you don't have any certifications, that's completely fine. You can go just to their website and sign up for a free account. The free account has several rich features. It will allow you to do assessments for up to 5 teams. Beyond that, it does become a paid subscription. So the picture that you see here is potentially what your dashboard could look like logging in, depending upon right, how many teams you have, what assessments you're looking at. But it is very nice. It has cool visualizations and widgets that are available right out of the box. So I'm going to walk you through just a little bit of what it would look like. This is more simplistic, and obviously you can customize it to what you would want. So when you're in Comparative Agility, the first thing that you have to do is create your team. So in here, for the purposes of this webinar, I created 3 teams. They are coastal bird themed. I live down in Venice, Florida, very close to the beach. So I like going out and looking at the birds. So as you can see, I have 3 teams here. I have the herons, the pelicans, and the sandpipers. So once I created this team, or these 3 teams, it gave me the choice to add an assessment. One of the things with comparative agility, an additional nice feature, is that they have so many out-of-the-box assessments that you can pick from. So you don't really have to start from ground zero if you've never done assessments before. The other cool thing too, these assessments that are available to you are put together by leading experts in their field. For example, this Agile Retrospectives Effectiveness Scale assessment. This was put together by Esther Dury and Diana Larson. They're literally the leading experts in the retrospective space. They've put out a wonderful book, Agile Retrospectives. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. But it just goes to show you these are the true experts that are putting together these assessments. So if that's an area for you and your team you really want to dive into, that would be an excellent assessment for you to take. If you're not in the IT space, they have a lovely Agile marketing assessment that you could have your team go through and take. Or if you wanted to take the initial one that I mentioned that really got this whole thing started with comparative agility, is the comparative agile assessment down here. So lots of choices. It can be overwhelming at first, right? There's so much to choose from. How do you hone in? Just pick the most basic thing that's going to work for your team. Figure out what is just enough and move forward. So the next screenshot here, just from my own personal account with comparative agility, is showing you that I went through, I did an assessment, and now you're in the analysis function. So I'm going to select Sandpiper as the team because that's the only one I did an assessment with so far. And then you can come over here to compare it with. So as I mentioned, you can compare it against the world index, or if you want to be a little bit more specific, a little bit more niche, they have these industry specific benchmarks that you could select instead. So if you're in the IT space, you could select that, or retail, or construction, or marketing, whatever it is, there's a ton in there that you can select. Or if you don't want to compare it to a benchmark and you want to compare it to the last assessment that you did, you can do that too, which is ideally what you'd want to focus on, right? How did we do from our baseline 3-6 months later? How are we doing now? So you can see those differences and those trends, which is really useful. This again is a sample report. So this is based off of me selecting Sandpipers versus the world index. So it has these really nice visualizations that will show you how you're doing in each of these different areas. So if you wanted to, you could drill into teamwork, you could drill into technical practices. And what these colors are showing you in this example is how you're doing relative to that world index. So anywhere you see these blue lines is your progress above the world index in that area. Anywhere you see these orange lines are showing you where you're below that world index. Now, if you were to do this comparison against yourself, that logic still holds. Where were you and where are you now? There's a ton more that you can play with in comparative agility. They do have a how to get started. I recommend you look at that. For me, this tool wasn't as intuitive as the Clearly Agile tool, but it definitely has more features and is data rich, depending upon your needs for your organization, what it is that you want to dive into. Kind of to wrap this up, we wanted to put together a nice resources slide for you. This will be sent out at the end of the webinar. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the principles, about the manifesto, you're welcome to go out there to those sites. We also put out the most recent Scrum Guide link, the Scrum Guide 2020, if you're interested in particularly the Scrum framework under that Agile umbrella. And then these are the links for the 2 tools that I talked about, the Agile assessment that was developed here at Clearly Agile, and then the comparative agility assessment. That kind of concludes the content portion of this webinar. For those that signed up and were really excited about that Amazon gift card, you will be receiving an email from Clearly Agile by the end of the day notifying you who won. So keep your eye out on that. Otherwise, that kind of wraps it up for us. Rachel, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not at all. That was awesome to see the tools and how they work. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Ashley will be sending out that email along with all the links on the base core information of everything that we went over today. Guys, this is just a little tiny touch of the spear. There's a little itty bitty information on a very, very large. There's a lot of information out there about assessments, about why they're important, how to do them, how to measure yourself, how to be objective. It's all out there. Follow through, keep looking into it, use it as an awesome tool to get your teams into that space, to energize them, to motivate leadership, to show progress. All of that will come together. And I wish you the best of luck. Thank you. Thank you all. And we will see you soon.